Elijah Cooper stared at the Chicago skyline he had built, knowing that everything he had worked for could crumble because of a secret he dared not reveal. As one of the city's most celebrated architects, his life seemed perfect: soaring skyscrapers, multi-million-dollar contracts, and the admiration of his peers. But beneath his polished exterior lay a heavy secret Elijah had kept hidden for years. That evening, at his father Frederick Cooper's opulent estate, everything changed. Frederick, a powerful real estate tycoon, had summoned his two sons to the grand dining room, illuminated by glistening chandeliers. "I've made a decision," Frederick began, his voice steady and commanding. "The first of you to give me a grandchild will inherit everything: the company, the shares, and the family properties." Elijah felt a wave of anxiety rise within him, gripping his chest like a vice. As the eldest son, he had always been the obvious heir, carrying the weight of his father's expectations. But now his secret, one he had kept hidden even from himself, threatened to unravel everything. He was single, childless, and far from starting a family, and he feared he might never be able to. His younger brother Nathan, equally ambitious but still unattached, smirked at Elijah from across the table. "Father, surely the future of the company should rest on merit, not heirs," Elijah said, his tone calm but firm. "Merit is important," Frederick replied, his gaze sharp. "But a true legacy requires more than just success in business. It needs bloodlines. That's my final decision." As dinner ended, Elijah left the estate with a heavy heart. How could he admit the truth? Years ago, he had been diagnosed with infertility, a secret he had guarded fiercely. Now, the threat of losing not just the inheritance but also his father's respect loomed large. For the first time in his life, Elijah, the man who had designed towering masterpieces, felt small and powerless. Elijah walked along a quiet street in the southern outskirts of Chicago, his mind consumed by his father's ultimatum. The weight of his thoughts blinded him to the flickering neon lights of old shops and the biting cold wind that pierced through his thick coat. A faint smell of burnt toast drifted through the heavy wooden doors of a small diner. Elijah stepped inside, looking for a quiet place to think. That's when he saw her. A young woman sat in the corner, exhaustion etched into her features. In front of her was an empty coffee cup and a sketch pad. Despite the dim lighting, Elijah noticed her eyes laden with sadness, yet flickering with a spark of determination. Her fingers glided over the paper, creating mesmerizing lines and shapes. "You're very talented," Elijah said unexpectedly. The woman startled, looking up at him. "Thanks, but talent doesn't pay rent," she replied, her tone laced with dry humor. Elijah smiled. "I could help with that, if you're willing to hear me out." The woman was Camila Rivera, a young, promising interior designer who had fallen into homelessness after being abandoned by her fiancé when she became pregnant. Elijah listened intently as she shared her story, every word tugging at his heart. Camila was alone, without money or shelter, but fiercely determined to create a better life for her unborn child. "I have a proposal," Elijah said, his voice steady. "Pretend to be my fiancé, and let me claim your baby as my own. In return, I'll provide you and your child with a better life, a home, health care, whatever you need." Camila stared at him with suspicion. "You think I'd agree to that just like that? You don't even know me." "I don't know much about you," Elijah admitted, "but I can see you're strong. I need your help, and I think in some way we can help each other." Camila was silent for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. "I don't trust you, but for the sake of my child, I'll do it. Just keep your promises." Elijah nodded, feeling a faint glimmer of hope amid the chaos in his mind. This might be his only chance to salvage his career and his pride. The next day, Elijah picked Camila up from the small motel where she was staying and drove her to a luxurious hotel in the heart of the city. The grand space, with its sleek, modern interiors, left Camila visibly overwhelmed, but Elijah quickly reassured her. "This is just the beginning," Elijah said as they entered the room. "If you're going to take on this role, you'll need to be prepared to step into my world, a world where every detail is scrutinized." Elijah enlisted a team of professionals to assist with Camila's transformation. Stylists, makeup artists, and etiquette coaches arrived in succession. Camila, accustomed to a simple life, found the attention both intimidating and surreal. "This isn't me," Camila said, staring at her reflection after her first makeover. "I'm just a regular person." "You are yourself," Elijah replied, his gaze softening. "But now, you're stepping into the role of someone the world will believe is my fiancé." As the days passed, Camila and Elijah began sharing more about their lives. Camila opened up about her unfinished dreams. One day, she hoped to open her own interior design studio and help young talents who lacked opportunities. "Elijah, have you ever thought about giving up?" she asked one evening as they relaxed after another long day. "Of course," he admitted, "but I can't let myself stop. I've always tried to live up to my father's expectations." Camila fell silent, sensing the weight of his burden. One evening, Elijah surprised Camila by opening up about his greatest secret. He told her about his infertility diagnosis years ago and the fear of seeing the disappointment in his father's eyes. "I've always felt like I don't deserve to inherit the family's legacy if I can't have children," he said, his voice breaking slightly. For the first time, Camila saw Elijah not as a cold, calculating man, but as someone vulnerable and deeply human. "You're not just an heir, Elijah. You're a good man, whether you see it or not," she said softly. Over the following days, their relationship grew closer. They were no longer just partners in an arrangement. They were two people who shared their most guarded truths with each other. The day of the family introduction finally arrived. Elijah, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, stood outside the Cooper family estate alongside Camila, who now looked every bit the part of an elegant fiancé. She wore a soft blue dress paired with subtle heels that accentuated her grace, though the anxiety in her eyes betrayed her calm exterior. "Remember, you're doing great," Elijah reassured her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "We just need to get through tonight." As they stepped inside, all eyes immediately turned toward Camila. At the head of the table sat Frederick, the patriarch of the Cooper family, his sharp gaze taking in every detail of her appearance. Next to him sat Nathan, Elijah's younger brother, whose expression was laced with suspicion. "Father, this is Camila," Elijah introduced, "my fiancée." Frederick raised an eyebrow but nodded politely. "Welcome to the family." Throughout dinner, Camila maintained a flawless demeanor, answering Frederick's questions with poise and intelligence. She spoke of her work in interior design and her ambitions, earning an approving nod from Frederick, a notoriously difficult man to impress. Nathan, however, remained unconvinced. He scrutinized her every move with a skeptical glare. After dinner, he pulled Elijah aside. "Where did you even find her?" Nathan demanded, his tone sharp. "There's something off about her." "Don't meddle, Nathan," Elijah replied, his voice calm but firm. Nathan wasn't deterred. Over the next few days, he hired a private investigator to dig into Camila's past. It didn't take long for him to uncover the truth. Camila wasn't someone Elijah had known for long, and more importantly, the timeline of her pregnancy didn't align with their story. A week later, during another family gathering, Nathan abruptly stood up, his gaze fixed on Camila. "I have something to say," he announced. The room fell silent. "Elijah and this woman, it's all a lie. She's not pregnant with his child. This entire thing is a sham, and I have proof." Elijah shot to his feet, his voice icy. "Nathan, don't do this." But Nathan pressed on. He presented documents from the investigator, pushing the room into a tense, suffocating quiet. All eyes turned to Camila, waiting for her to respond. The room was so quiet it felt suffocating. Frederick's gaze shifted from Nathan to Elijah, and finally rested on Camila. "What is the meaning of this, Elijah?" Frederick asked, his voice calm but steely. Elijah took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto his father's. "Father, the truth is—" "Let me explain," Camila interrupted, her voice trembling but resolute. She stood up, her gaze meeting Frederick's directly. "Nathan is right. Elijah is not the father of my child. This started as an agreement between us." Frederick's expression tightened, disappointment flickering in his eyes. Nathan, meanwhile, wore a triumphant smirk. "I was just a homeless woman, abandoned while pregnant," Camila continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Elijah offered to help me, to give me and my child a chance at a better life. In return, I agreed to pretend to be his fiancée." She paused to take a shaky breath, steadying herself. But over time, things changed. I'm not doing this for the agreement anymore. I love him, and I know Elijah loves me and this baby, even if it isn't his. Elijah stepped forward, standing by Camila's side. Father, I know I was wrong to hide the truth, but I couldn't bear to lose my last chance to uphold our family's legacy. More importantly, I love Camila and want to build a real family with her. The room fell silent again. Frederick sat motionless, his face unreadable. Finally, he rose from his chair, turning to Nathan with a piercing gaze. Nathan, he said, his voice firm with authority, do you truly believe exposing your brother like this is the act of a responsible man? You've not only humiliated him, but you've also revealed your own selfishness and lack of compassion. Nathan lowered his head, unable to respond. Frederick turned to Elijah and Camila. Lies and deceit have no place in this family, Frederick thundered, his voice echoing through the room. But as he looked at Elijah and Camila, standing side by side, his anger gave way to something unexpected: understanding. Your courage to admit the truth and the love you share are proof of what truly matters. A family is not built solely on blood. It is built on love, trust, and the willingness to stand by each other no matter what. Frederick's words seemed to warm the air in the room. Camila couldn't hold back the tears that streamed down her face. The room remained silent after Frederick's declaration. After a few moments, he walked over to Camila, his sharp eyes now softened with warmth. Camila, Frederick said, his voice low but kind, I can see you've endured so much, but the love and courage you've shown for Elijah and this child are admirable. Thank you for bringing that to this family. Camila looked up at Frederick, tears streaming down her face as she nodded slightly. Frederick turned to Nathan. You may be my son, Nathan, but today you've disappointed me. This legacy isn't something to be won by tearing others down. Nathan, his head lowered under his father's stern gaze, muttered, I'm sorry, I just wanted to prove I'm worthy too. Frederick sighed. Worthiness isn't for me to decide. It's determined by your actions, not by undermining others. Just then, Camila gasped in pain, clutching her belly. Elijah, I think it's time. Everyone sprang into action. Elijah and Frederick quickly helped Camila into the car and drove straight to the nearest hospital. Throughout the ride, Elijah held her hand tightly, whispering words of comfort. When they arrived, Camila was rushed into the delivery room. Elijah stayed just outside, his hands clenched together, his face a mix of worry and hope. Frederick approached, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. You've done well, Elijah, he said. The love you've shown for Camila and this child is what makes you worthy of this family's legacy. Hours later, the first cries of a newborn echoed through the hospital halls. A nurse emerged and smiled at Elijah. Congratulations, you have a healthy baby girl. Elijah entered the room, where Camila lay cradling the baby in her arms. She looked up at him, exhausted but radiant with joy. Our little girl, Elijah, she whispered. Elijah leaned down, kissing Camila's forehead and then the baby's. Thank you. This is the greatest gift I've ever received. A week after Camila gave birth, the Cooper family held a small gathering at the estate to welcome the newest member of the family, a baby girl named Lily. The atmosphere was filled with joy, a stark contrast to the tension and suspicion that had once plagued the household. Frederick stood up, holding a glass of red wine, and looked around the table. Today, we not only welcome Lily, but also celebrate a new beginning for this family, he said. Elijah, you've shown that our family's legacy is not just about wealth or power, but about love and responsibility. I'm entrusting you with the leadership of the company. Elijah, clearly moved, stood and nodded. Thank you, Father. I promise to continue building the company with all my heart, not just for our family, but for the values you've taught me. Frederick turned to Nathan, his gaze softer. Nathan, I know your intentions were good, but your methods were flawed. I'm giving you a portion of the family assets so you can start something of your own. Use it to do something meaningful. Nathan looked up, remorse evident in his eyes. Thank you, Father. I'll work hard to make up for my mistakes and do better. Months later, Nathan used his share of the inheritance to establish a charitable foundation to support single parents, inspired by Camila's story. Meanwhile, Elijah and Camila celebrated their wedding in an intimate ceremony in the family garden. The garden, designed by Elijah himself, was filled with blooming white lilies, symbolizing rebirth and new beginnings. As they exchanged vows under the soft glow of the afternoon sun, Camila's eyes filled with happy tears. "Elijah, I never thought I'd find a real family. You've made that a reality." Elijah held her hands tightly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You've given me something I thought was impossible, a family, a home, and a future I never dared to dream of." As he spoke, tears glistened in his eyes, and the garden around them seemed to glow with the warmth of their love. Baby Lily, nestled in Frederick's arms, giggled as he gently rocked her. Camila and Elijah stood nearby, their hands intertwined, while Nathan watched with a small but genuine smile. The once cold Cooper estate now echoed with laughter and joy as the family gathered around, sharing stories and toasts to their future. For the first time in years, the Coopers felt not like a dynasty, but a true family. Elijah realized that the most valuable thing in his life wasn't the skyscrapers he had designed or the fortune he had inherited. It was the family he and Camila had built together. The story closes with the Coopers gathered in the garden, a symbol of the strength of love, forgiveness, and unity.